formerly a British protectorate that relied heavily on the pearling industry, Qatar has transformed itself since midway through the 20th century. The discovery of oil and natural gas reserves and subsequent exploitation of these natural resources following WWII led to an explosion of wealth for this Persian Gulf nation. Today, Qatar boasts one of the fastest-growing economies, expanding into the technology and investment industries in recent years. As a result, modern Qatar is opening its doors to the world, showing off its true colors. In 2022, the Football World Cup will be the highlight of the country's amazing rise to the world stage. Doha is certainly the heart and soul of Qatar. No other city in the country comes close to its gleaming splendor. The Corniche in Doha is the center of Doha's entertainment district. The Doha Zoo, cultural village, shopping malls, and its amazing museums make up most of the attractions in the city. Outside of Doha, the desert area provides a spectacular landscape for safaris, which have become an important part of the country's tourism industry. Of course, no trip to Qatar is complete without experience a local souk. Souk Waqif is a magnificent destination where tourists can try their hand at bargaining. Accommodation is becoming more expensive every year throughout Qatar. With the increase in tourism, demand for rooms is placing more stress on the city of Doha and other areas like Al Khor. Tourists looking for a 5-star or 4-star experience can find some beautiful modern hotels in Doha. The nightlife mostly centers around the capital too. Due to strict drinking laws in Qatar, most of the restaurants and pubs that serve alcohol are found inside major hotels. The cuisine in Qatar is quite diverse. Tourists will be able to sample a range of international, regional, and traditional foods. Of course, homesick American travelers will be able to eat at many homegrown franchises, such as McDonald's, Burger King, Applebee's, Hardee's, and Kentucky Fried Chicken. Doha International Airport is the primary airport in Qatar. The airport is home to one of the world's fastest-growing airlines, Qatar Airways. Tourists can reach anywhere on the peninsula from the airport in less than an hour or two. It is also possible to reach Qatar by road through Saudi Arabia. However, customs at the border tend to be slow, with reports of wait times exceeding 4 hours at night. The fixed bus routes between Qatar and Saudi are only slightly less expensive than air tickets from the surrounding region. Therefore, it is probably better if tourists fly into Qatar than travel by land. Qatar remains relatively hot all year round. The tiny peninsular nation can reach very extreme temperatures. Summers are the hottest time of the year, and quite long, lasting from the months of May through to September. Temperatures can hit as high as 122 degrees on a regular basis. The winter period in Qatar is still relatively warm, with temperatures hovering between 7 degrees and 8 degrees. Rainfall is scarce, which is similar to other Middle Eastern countries. Each year, the country receives less than an average of 4 inches of rain. Qatar boasts some beautiful drives, whether tourists decide to take a car along the coastline or through the central desert of the country. Hiring a car is possible, but taxis are far more convenient. Unfortunately, the high number of tourists than expats in Qatar means taxis are harder to find. However, a recent push to increase the supply of taxis has started to create more balance between taxi supply and demand. Considering a stopover in Doha or planning your first visit to Qatar for the FIFA World Cup, this list of 19 incredibly useful Qatar travel tips covers everything from dress code and rules for couples to budgeting and how to move around the city. In many respects, Qatar is a closed book. Before I decided to sign up for a layover in Doha, I knew very little about this tiny oil-rich Islamic country in the Persian Gulf. Like many travelers before me, it was precisely this sense of the unknown that lured me to visit Doha, and the promise of fragrant souks, harbors crowded with dhow boats, and men parading the streets with falcons perched on their wrists instead of Rolex watches. What is it like to travel in the richest country in the world per capita, where more than 85% of the local population are expats or migrant workers? Most people's experience of Qatar will be like mine, a somewhat superficial brush with a small but socially complex country on an extended layover. For practical reasons, Qatar is a great place to break up a long flight. Even if your visit is fleeting, there are certain things you should know about Qatar in advance to make your experience in this beautiful Middle Eastern nation smoother and more enjoyable. Qatar definitely shouldn't be your first choice if you're looking to pinch pennies on a trip. While it's not the most expensive destination in the world, Qatar is a place for luxury living for most who come to visit. That being said, expats love Qatar's tax-free status. Salaries are high here, so you expect some of the highest prices on rent and food in the Middle East. Here's a little breakdown of the costs. Food. The geography of Qatar means that most foods have to be imported, so most food items, especially international dishes, tend to come at a higher price than in the US and even the UK. According to some of the latest data, a 3-course meal for 2 at an average restaurant will typically set you back about Qr 600. A meal at McDonald's comes out to about $6.50 USD, which is about the same as what you would pay at home. Accommodation, according to Nomad List, the average Airbnb in Qatar costs a whopping $8,000 USD per month. But it's not impossible to find something on a more modest budget. You can get a 2-star hotel for less than $100 USD a night in Doha, and there are plenty of stylish hotel stays near the city center that you can grab for around 300 QR. Summer deals are currently available, but note that prices will likely skyrocket when the World Cup comes to town. Transportation. Most people get around by car, and gas is very cheap in Qatar. If you want to use public transportation, the standard cost is between 3 and 4 QR for a one-way fare in the capital city of Doha, and between 4 and 9 QR outside of Doha. If you want to explore the outskirts, book a tour that comes with transportation to and from your hotel. Qataris are well known for their hospitality, and are always eager to welcome foreigners and show them their country. While helpful and hospitable, visitors are also expected to respect and abide by the local customs. So if you read up before your trip and follow the major do's and don'ts, you'll be just fine. Customs and culture, do's and don'ts. This do's and don'ts section is probably the most important part of our things to know post for Qatar. Strap yourselves in, because there's a lot of things to read up on before your trip. Keep this handy for during your trip so that you don't forget anything. No PDA, any hugging, kissing, or anything physical in public with the opposite sex is not allowed in Qatar and can get you fined or banned. Holding hands and a cheek peck is okay if it's between husband and wife. However, dress modestly. Non-Muslim women aren't required to cover themselves with a hijab or niqab, but you'll have to cover yourself before entering a mosque. Even though you don't necessarily need to cover yourself in public, men and women alike are still expected to dress modestly. As for bikinis, best to save them for the hotel pool only, as public beaches have the same dress etiquette as other public spaces. Same-sex relationships are illegal in Qatar. Tipping. If there's no service fee added to the bill, then a 10% tip is appropriate. While some bars and clubs allow for drinking alcohol in public is illegal in Qatar. Gestures to avoid. A number of physical gestures are considered very offensive in Qatar and can result in a fine or worse, so make sure to take note of these. Don't do the thumbs up sign. While this is a casual greeting in Western culture, it is considered very rude in Qatar. Don't cross your legs, especially when sitting in front of someone older or higher up. Don't use one finger to gesture for someone to come over, like to call a waiter, for instance. As an alternative, use the palm of your hand. It's also very rude to point at someone or even something. This is not a comprehensive list of all the culture and customs in Qatar. If you plan on moving here or staying for a longer period of time, we suggest reading a guidebook that's specific to Qatari culture to get the full picture of what to expect. Top trending things to do in Qatar. From world-class shopping malls to museums and mangroves, a trip to Qatar is filled with wonders. Here are some of the top trending things to do for your trip. Al Thakira Mangroves. 2 hours away from Doha is this beautiful region of mangroves and other wildlife in Al Khor. Once there, you can rent a kayak to explore the area. Museum of Islamic Art in Doha. This gorgeous museum holds one of the largest collections of Islamic art in the world. You can also get some of the best views of the city's skyline from the museum grounds. Hit the beach. Being mostly seaside, Qatar is a great place to explore the gorgeous beaches that stretch along the peninsula. Try Al Maruna and Fuwairat Beach for beautiful views, and Qatar Beach for water sports that the entire family will love. If you follow the rules and local customs, traveling in Qatar is relatively safe. While there are still some reports of pickpockets in certain areas, know that Qatar has a low crime rate, and you'll be safe if you stick to the main areas and don't venture out alone at night. Travel insurance tips for your trip. Travel insurance is always a good idea when going on any type of trip. Get yourself covered with the right health insurance in case you get sick or if your belongings get stolen or lost at some point during your trip to Qatar. Local eats and drink. Mouth-watering meat dishes with rice and fresh veggies, fragrant coffee and tea, and spices galore. A visit to Qatar will no doubt be tempting for your taste buds. Here are some of the top eats and drink to try when visiting Qatar. Warak anab, traditional stuffed grape leaves that come as a great side dish. Matchboos, spiced rice with just about any type of meat. Kusamasi, stuffed zucchinis with red sauce. Saluna, a stew made with a spicy broth and a bunch of local veggies. Karak chai, a strong tea. What are the top apps to use? There are some handy apps that will be worth downloading before your trip to Qatar, including Talabat, the nation's main food delivery app, Carwa and Uber, Qatar's main ride-sharing apps, The Entertainer, to get deals for local attractions, spas, and restaurants in Qatar, Babbel and Duolingo, great language apps for practicing some basic Arabic phrases for your trip. Even though the Wi-Fi in Qatar is very fast, we are giving it a 4 out of 5 because lots of websites and searches are blocked with Qatar's internet. The average internet speed is about 11 Mbps. What are the best cultural experiences? There are so many opportunities to experience Qatari culture and learn a bit of history on your trip. Start your adventure off by booking a once-in-a-lifetime glamping trip to the nearby desert, where you can sleep under the stars in a 5-star, full-service campground. So you'll be living just like the Bedouins do, but with Wi-Fi. Your trip to Qatar will most likely start in Doha, which is the perfect place to dip your toe in Qatari local culture. The city's main market, the Souk Waqif, is the perfect place to people watch and pick up some handicrafts and gorgeously colorful textiles. Save room in your suitcase. How long can I stay? At the time of writing, travelers from over 95 countries don't need to apply for a visa if planning a short visit to Qatar. Travelers from the US, UK, and most of Europe will be given a visa on arrival, which will allow them to stay for up to 30 days in the country, with the possibility to renew once to get 30 more days. You just need to make sure your passport's valid for at least 6 months from arrival and show an onward ticket at immigration. Check the Hamad International Airport immigration page for more detailed info. While Qatar is a new player on the global travel scene, a trip here won't disappoint. There's plenty of amazing experiences to be had, food to eat, and things to learn. Arrive with an open mind and be welcomed by the unique sights and sounds of this beautiful region. It's easy to visit Qatar on a budget. While Doha has a reputation of being all about the slave labor glitzy skyscrapers, Qatar is a surprisingly easy country to spend little money in. Doha is home to the Q Hostel, where prices come in at just $16 a night for a dorm bed, so there's somewhere affordable to stay for my budget travelers out there. Food is pretty cheap, too. I usually spent around $7 for a meal in Doha, less if I was grabbing street food from a hipster Airstream. I was surprised to see street food trucks all over Doha, selling anything from Chinese dumplings to hot dogs. Transportation is inexpensive. You'll pay less than $1 to get around Doha by bus and maybe $3 or $4 to travel by bus to another city. Uber's available in Doha, too, and I'd opt for that most of the time or ask my hotel to call me a taxi. Like many countries around the world, you'll want to make sure the driver is using the meter and remind them that your fare is free if they don't. When it comes to activities, you won't need to spend much on entrance fees. The fantastic Museum of Islamic Art is totally free to check out, and so is Al Zubair's UNESCO-designated fort. Other free attractions include the Abdul Wahab Mosque, which is so beautiful, camel racing competitions at Al Shahaniya, complete with robot jockeys, and the Ras Abrauk Nature Reserve. For something quirky, check out the Sheikh Faisal Museum, which is home to a Qatari businessman's collection of weird shit. It's 45 Qatari Rial, and you'll find 600 classic cars, ancient coins, dinosaur fossils, a peacock farm, a Syrian horse, random weapons, and so much more. So Qatar can be pretty affordable, but there's one exception, and that's taking tours as a solo traveler. If you get lucky, Qatar's luxury can be surprisingly affordable. I managed to score a heavily discounted stay in a 5-star hotel for just $90 a night for no other reason than it was a last-minute booking, and they had a lot of rooms still available. One final thing I want to mention is that Qatar Airways offers an incredible layover scheme that I'd highly recommend taking advantage of. You can spend up to 4 days in the country on a layover, and the airline will put you up in a 4- or 5-star hotel without you needing to spend a penny. Seriously, for some reason, my best day trips from Doha might be the main destination when it comes to Qatar tourism, especially for those looking to escape the city's hustle and bustle for a while. If you like this video, please subscribe our channel, and thanks for watching.